Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to introduce our Congressman, Michael Cloud.
Well, thank you. It is good to be here today. We are so excited about all the things that are going to be discussed today. But if you can join me, first of all, in the Pledge of Allegiance as we begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, it is an exciting time to be here today. There is so much that's going on in the Corpus Christi region, and we're here certainly to celebrate it today. Today's a big day with a lot to talk about, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything that's happening. 2021, we all know, has been a year of challenges, but with challenges come opportunity, and the people of our region have really done a tremendous job of facing those challenges, working together to overcome them, and we're seeing the results of it here in our local community. And certainly, you should give yourselves a hand and be proud of the work that you're doing. So, a couple highlights. Steel Dynamics is almost fully operational, and there's many companies, of course, moving in to support that. Gulf Coast Growth Ventures is fully operational. Together, those two companies alone are providing thousands of new jobs to our community. And of course, we know how important this is because it's those jobs that help support the good schools. It's those jobs that provide for families. It's all the wonderful things that get done on the human level starts with the economic growth that happens in a region and those people committed to making that happen. And so we are certainly here to celebrate that today, to hear more about what's going on in our region and how we can meet the challenges that are ahead of us. But I did want to take a minute as we start to present to the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corp. the AEDO accreditation from the International Economic Development Council. And this is an exciting time. There's only 70 like organizations in the world that have met this criteria. And so this is something that we celebrate today. It's with this accreditation that they're one of, 70 organizations. And we are excited to present this today to Ian Vassie on behalf of the corporation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Oh. Great work ahead.
Thank
Yours.
Oh. Thank you, everyone. You know, you realize we're one of 70 organizations that went through this process, and we were able to do it because of your support and your participation. It's a test of everything from performance metrics to ethics to everything that goes into a top-flight economic development organization. And I'm proud to work for an organization that's led by yourselves as members to be able to do this. Welcome, everybody, to CCREDC Live. So we're running this live as well for those folks who can't participate. I'm your host, Ian Vassie, and first and foremost, I want to say thank you for your continued support of the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation in 2021. As president and CEO, I'm so very proud of the work we've done together to bring new business investments, help existing business expansions, and add jobs to the coastal bend this past year. This year has seen solid growth for our region in steel, mid-sized manufacturing, and tech industries, which brought in a new wave of economic diversification, new residents, and an increase in the median income and educational attainment level for our area. That being said, we're still pretty far from having next year's meeting at the newly opened Elon Musk Center for Interspatial Studies. So we're not done. We're not done yet. Unless we all strike it rich in crypto, it's not going to happen. Or maybe in one of the local illegal game rooms that none of us go to, of course. I'm afraid this is the first time I'm hearing the track that comes with it. We took a bold step as a regional economy, investing in technology of unmanned aerial systems, and we'll see the City of Corpus Christi and Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi, partnering with a new downtown campus focused on UAS and drone systems. Imagine where this technology will take us. Packages being delivered by drones, energy companies monitoring pipeline routes, our maritime industry fully engaged in UAS systems. But let's be honest, the one thing we've been waiting for, what a burger, online drone delivery service. That'll be great, right? I'm afraid of this thing. It keeps popping up. As we continue to grow, we're expanding our horizons into green energy. The U.S. is way behind our European and Asian competitors in incentivizing and promoting green and renewable energy sectors, the green and blue energy that we've been talking about. These projects are going to come to the U.S., so why not have them come here to the Coastal Bend? We need to position ourselves with incentives, new education and training programs, and with great support infrastructure to be able to secure these deals. To quote the great Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. Shake and bake, baby. We're currently tracking more than $10 billion of these types of deals, looking all around Texas, around the Gulf Coast, and the wider United States. We need to pull on the same rope together to get the first of these deals here. The investments are going somewhere. It might as well be here. I mean, we all watch Squid Game, right? You don't want to be on the wrong side of that rope, right? I can't believe they talked me into this. This is not to say we move away from our traditional energy sectors, but to help us build a diversified energy portfolio. We must attract new and emerging sectors to secure the future of the Coastal Bend. Look at our crude oil exports leading the nation in movements. Enbridge, the new owner of Moda Midstream, has major plans for the future. Our friends at Cheniere are leading the world in the LNG market, the fastest growing hydrocarbon sector, and they're adding 7 additional trains with at least $2 billion more coming into this area. So, sorry, I went off script there, but that's the kind of projects we're looking at. These are so important deals. Those are just a couple of the great things that we're looking at happening here. And yet, with the growth and expansion comes the need to recruit new talent. Every major employer and potential new project we meet with mentions the top issues as local talent and employee training. It's no longer good enough to just be able to find able bodies who know how to use the Google machine. It's about finding qualified people to do the jobs and perform them well. And I see our friends at Del Mar College and A&M Corpus Christi and some of the other training programs, IBEW, our friends there with their electrical internship programs and apprenticeship programs. It's a lot of folks being involved in this deal. Currently, our unemployment rate sits at around 5.8%, and yet we have about 8,000 jobs open around the region, according to our friends at Workforce Solutions. I saw Amy here, if she'll put her hand up and wave. I was trying to come up with a good unemployment joke, but none of them worked. I didn't write that one. Not one of mine. One of the major disconnects is related to getting educated, qualified, and credentialed staff to fill these jobs. It seems that what companies who are winning at this game are the ones investing in their people, paying strong wages and benefits, and providing staff with regular hours and shifts. I know, right? What a bunch of snowflakes. What's next? Cappuccinos and ping pong tables in the break room. I'm sorry, Jordan. I don't know how we ended up with this. But seriously, as I look at the horizon, I see a lot of the baby boomer generation retiring in the next 5 years. We need to fill these jobs as folks retire in order to remain competitive as a region. We need to be thinking about how we can get everyone the right credentials, certificates, and qualifications in essential professions around the area. Getting more kids into serious training at community college, it's not socialism, folks, it's workforce development. The issue of talent is really the number one thing I lie awake at night, and I know a lot of you all in this room as business leaders, you all lie awake at night thinking about that same thing. With an influx of talent, They're going to need somewhere to live. We've talked about the housing situation in the Coastal Bend for a number of years. Not enough homes are being built to accommodate the growth that's already coming. The second is the affordability index, in that median families and our poor millennials cannot buy median-priced homes. I mean, they can afford avocado toast and $10 lattes on the daily, but they have no furniture in their overpriced apartments. So we need to be driving towards a two-pronged solution. The first is getting more houses built, especially in infill locations and avoiding urban sprawl. Smart growth, if you will, promoting many diverse housing options. Secondly, we need to raise median household incomes. You know how we do that? We get more people qualified and credentialed to be able to get the new high-paying technical jobs in everything from energy, manufacturing, medical, construction, and other STEM-related fields. Let's really build our talent pipeline, get the high-paying jobs in the hands of our local people, and then they're able to buy the new homes, raise their families here, plant an avocado tree to comply with the new city ordinance. That'll take the pressure off Bart Brazelton, who I'm sure is late, because Bart is late to every single meeting. He is here. Sorry, that's an inside joke. He's late to every darn meeting we are in, so there he is. Let's see. Think about that. High-paying jobs, high-demand fields. I'm definitely not talking about degrees in basket weaving. Okay, let's stop that thing. It's so off-putting. All right, with our growth trajectory in mind, 2021 saw the completion of our Coastal Bend, a comprehensive study to determine what our region's residents love and hate about our community. Keep in mind, we completed this study way before TxDOT's announcement of the Harbor Bridge replacement timeline and the JFK Causeway construction. At least now we know that the bridge is going to be done. Can I get an amen to that? Roll on spring 2024, although there's a bit of an under-over that it might be spring 2025. So, a couple of people are trying to place bets on that. This data will help local leaders as they develop plans for the future, making us as attractive as possible to new talent considering a move to the region while retaining the folks who have already chosen to make our area home. It includes everything from recommendations on how to activate our waterfronts and parks, spur redevelopment of older areas, attract remote workers, and keep the key 18 to 34 demographic in our area. Here's a really long video for you all to watch about the subject.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Borgstrom. I'm a principal with the firm Place and Main Advisors, and we're based in East Lansing, Michigan. And we were contracted by the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation to conduct a phase 2 from a study that you heard about last year called Our Coastal Bend, where it looked at the attachment that people feel towards the region. This phase was designed to look at those shortcomings of the first phase of that study and look to see how we could build upon that to make the Coastal Bend region more attractive to people to want to stay and place roots and create long-term connection to the community. So just a brief summary of phase 1. What we found in phase 1 when we did the large analysis was that there was really a big strength and a couple of big weaknesses that we wanted to make sure to address. The largest strength that we had was that the Corpus Christi area and the Coastal Bend region was very family friendly and it was great for senior citizens, although it had a couple of weaknesses, particularly in the 18 to 34 demographic, that there weren't enough places for people to meet, there weren't enough social offerings, and again, the government services and educational offerings, people felt they fell a little short. So the purpose of phase 2, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, was to enhance and expand the things that we found in that first phase that would help folks create a better connection and help retain and attract residents to the region. So I'm going to go over briefly some of the key recommendations that we had from this study. When we looked at the plan, we really wanted to base it off of 3 main areas: aesthetics and community assets, social offerings, and economic offerings and place connectedness. Up first is aesthetics and community assets. First and foremost, we think it's really important to strengthen the downtown core of Corpus Christi. As the downtown for the region, it is really important that this creates a great experience for folks, because this is the primary way in which people are going to interact with the city itself. And one of the key recommendations that we had here was to add 2,000 housing units to the downtown and adjacent neighborhoods. We realize 2,000 units sounds like a lot, but when you look at the housing projections for the next 5 years, 2,000 units only represents about 2% of the total housing units in the region altogether. So this is really an attainable goal. Also, we want to look at activating beachfront and parks, and we want to give this brief example, recognizing that the beachfront itself, the parkland that goes all along the coast there, is a fantastic asset for the region, but it is not really programmed as well as it could be. And part of the challenge with programming is things like flooding and hurricanes and some of the weather issues that you have there. So we wanted to offer some suggestions on what we call semi-permanent activation of some of those spots. And this was a good example we wanted to show. Just idea around being able to use trailers to activate a space. This creates kind of a little bar or coffee shop right there on a beach or in a parking lot near the coastal areas. The next part of this is creating neighborhood nodes and development, and again, in improving aesthetics and community assets. One of the things that we found really interesting was how fast the region is growing from a housing standpoint, particularly when you look at the south side of the city of Corpus Christi, of creating these neighborhood nodes, which is kind of a plannery term. I don't mean to get too geeky, but it's really about creating kind of neighborhoods, not just creating housing and strip malls. And we've seen a lot of that development over the last few years, but really creating something that feels more like a downtown or what we call a traditional commercial neighborhood. This is an example I wanted to show you. This is out of Huntsville, Alabama. And this was actually built over the last 10 years, and they're continuing on this development, but it's creating this neighborhood node in West Huntsville, where there's a huge housing boom going on. And a lot of the housing is kind of geared around this neighborhood. So it's not a whole series of grid homes that just kind of goes as far as you can see. That they're actually developing neighborhoods around these commercial neighborhood nodes. The other thing we want to make sure is we really point out the importance of public art. Now, I will tell you that downtown Corpus Christi and a lot of the surrounding areas have some tremendous public art, and I think it's a great asset. We want to build upon that and continue to encourage that public art, even in the new development that happens both in the city and in the surrounding areas. I want to give this example from Searcy, Arkansas, which is it was literally an abandoned alley, which they kind of did some creative. They allowed local artists to go through and create this really cool mural. And now it's really a destination for the area. People come here and they get their pictures taken. And it's really kind of a thing where people just kind of come and check out. And they do rotate kind of artwork. So they allow folks to come in, they have their piece displayed for a year or two, and then that gets painted over and gets redone. And just use of lights, those types of things to create kind of this cool space in downtown Searcy. Moving on to social offerings. One of the interesting things about the region is how many folks come into the coastal Bend region and then stay for a little bit and then leave. So you have a very transient population. Part of that is military based, part of that is corporate based. But the idea around creating this community onboard service that allows for people to come into the community, get introduced to the key institutions and places and things and people that they should know, and then allows them to kind of become part of the community a little bit faster. Same with concierge service. Again, people will move to the community, not know where they could or should be going for things, but to allow the ability for a new resident to call, say, the chamber or the CCREDC and be able to ask, all right, where do we go for this? And that helps create that framework to allow people to create connections quicker within the community. One of the big things that we heard, especially from the 18 to 34-year-olds, was the idea around helping them attain home ownership. We're seeing a very big divide when we see Gen X and boomers versus, say, millennials and Gen Zs and the ability for home ownership. So helping these millennials and these Gen Z generations to be able to attain home ownership quicker. We're seeing, again, that divergence between the ability to do that because of the housing market and wages that are being earned at those more entry levels. So helping these folks become established to own real estate to help establish those roots within the region. The other key part of this is trailing spouse. So allowing the ability for a trailing spouse who comes for the one spouse comes to the region for a job, and then to be able to connect the other spouse with the opportunities for employment elsewhere. And this was a really good example that we found in Vail Valley, which is in Vail, Colorado. For those trailing spouses, they have a core group of businesses within the region who've committed saying, we will let spouses know when we have available jobs. And so they've created this database around this idea of available jobs for these trailing spouses. Now, it's not exclusively for these trailing spouses, but it is one of those ways that we can allow for those trailing spouses to know about these different employment opportunities. One of the other things we want to do around economic offerings and place connectedness is the idea of increasing education. So we looked at the Dallas County Promise as one of a couple of hundred promise programs around the country, but this idea of creating one specifically for students in the Coastal Bend to have them have the opportunity to pursue a 2 or 4 year degree after high school that allows for a better educated workforce and creates a more of a direct pipeline between the high schools in the region and TAMU CC and Del Mar College. Speaking of that, I also want to encourage the further expansion of both the higher education institutions, but TAMU CC, excuse me, this is Del Mar Colleges on the south side. The south side campus is a phenomenal idea that's moving forward. The idea of helping to expand that and to be able to build onto those key sectors in which they're looking to target the south side too, and then in partnership with that, also looking at TAMU CC's expansion into downtown, again, encouraging them as an anchor, getting more of those folks to interact and engage within the downtown core is incredibly important. So a couple of brief overviews. The 18 to 34 demographic, which folks identified as being a key statistic for the region. The idea around professional development efforts. So one of the things that we heard a lot from that demographic was that the workforce requirements were either entry level or 10 years experience. There wasn't a whole lot in between there. So again, allowing them to have professional development in that entry level to 10-year window. The idea around home ownership assistance programs, which we've already talked about, creating more walkable communities that goes to this neighborhood node idea. Folks want to be able to live somewhere, be able to walk and go to dinner and do shopping and be able to come back and not have to get into a car. We're seeing that across the country. This is not something that's kind of unique to the Coastal Bend, but we are seeing this especially for the millennial and Gen Z generations, more so than boomers or Gen Xers. Diversity of housing stock. So one of the things that's interesting is that you guys seem to have a divergence in your housing. You have multifamily and you have single family and not a whole lot in between. So the idea of being able to do more condos, being able to do more row housing, to do duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes, which allows for people to live in a building and still be able to rent, units that are adjacent to them. So the idea of creating more diverse housing stock is important. And again, increasing social offerings, not necessarily the fact that you need more park space as an example. You have phenomenal park space. It's activating those park spaces. It's getting folks into, being able to have businesses where people can be social and interact. And then some of the general recommendations that we have for the overall area, again, the idea of the talent retention programs, 2,000 additional units again in the downtown, the public park and beach activation, increasing the mixed use neighborhoods that goes along with that, those neighborhood nodes, but creating these places where people can walk to shops, to restaurants, and be able to walk back home. Creating your zoning standards, which I know that the city of Corpus Christi in particular has been really good about putting together, along with the incentives, but in broadening those incentives to further encourage this type of development. Addressing blighted properties also came up, and we've provided some examples for how to address that in the place enhancement plan. And then even things like litter campaigns. I can't tell you the number of times when we talk to folks, people brought up just garbage laying around, and people brought up diapers in parking lots. So creating litter campaigns in which allows folks to both encourage the decrease of, to not litter, and then also for cleanup programs. And we provide a couple of examples for that. Other things people really complain about, this was interesting, the roads. I got to tell you, we work in a lot of different places. People complain about the roads. In your case, it actually bore out in the in-place connectedness, how much the roads bother people. So doing things like pothole repair warranties as part of road construction projects. Also, moving on to public art programs, which we talked about earlier, increasing the number of festivals and events. When I talk about programming that space, that's what I mean, having more festivals and events and encouraging those. And then again, the social offerings, the community concierge and connectedness programs, having TAMU CC as a downtown anchor, and Del Mar College tuition programs that Coastal Bend Promise will all be really important to be able to help for people to create connections within the community and place roots so they'll be here long term.
A lot of interesting recommendations in the plan. A lot of folks are going to have to be involved in this and helping to quarterback this. Again, but based on community data, accurate information, and accurate surveys, so it's actually based on something, not just anecdotal information. So I think there's a short video from our governor right up next. I think he had a brief message for us.
Hi, this is Governor Greg Abbott. I want to say congratulations to the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation on the recognition as an accredited economic development organization. The work that you all do to grow the job base in Nueces, Aransas, and San Patricio counties is key to making Texas the best place to work, to live, and to raise a family. With the busy Port of Corpus Christi and the business that it brings, your region is primed for even greater growth. So thank you so much for helping us to turn Texas into the world's 9th largest economy and an economic juggernaut that is the envy of America. May God bless you all, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Thank you, Governor. Okay, I want to personally thank you so much for your support, which has made this possible. We're looking forward to what's next for our beautiful corner of the world. And with that being said, let me bring up our 2021 chair, Ms. Jordan Anderson.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today and showing your support for the CCREDC. We have some business to take care of today as part of this event, and that is to elect our 2022 proposed slate of officers. So they should be up on the screen in front of you. I'll read them aloud. Chairman William Goldston, Vice Chairman Judith Talavera, Treasurer Robert J. Gonzalez, Secretary Brian Gully, BDAC Chairman Philip Ramirez, past Chairman, again, Chris Hamilton, our investor representatives serving a 3-year term, Anna Aldridge, Eric Evans, and Kevin Lasan, and our investor representative serving out a 1-year term is Philip Ramirez. So if I can hear a motion from the board to accept the slate. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you. Again, all right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the slate as proposed, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Congratulations to our new slate of officers. Thank you. All right. I'll move out of the way.
We're going to have William Goldston, our new 2022. Goodness, I lost track of the years there for a second. William Goldston, our incoming chairman, come up and take a seat. And Jordan. Okay, this is where we get into some of this is what we're going to do and this is what we've done. So, Jordan.
Yes.
2021 was another, I'm going to call it interesting year for all of us. What are you most proud of from your tenure as chairman of the CCREDC Board of Directors?
Yeah, 2021, another challenging year. But it was a great year for us as an organization. It was a great year for us as a region. I've been on this board for a long time, and
right.
and I'm really proud of the work we did with our quality of place study that we started during Chris Hamilton's tenure as chairman, and that we continued through mine. And I hope that all of you listening today and seeing that data will be key partners in implementing some of the things that will make Corpus Christi a place where everybody wants to stay and live, and not stay for a few years and then move on to the next place. I really think that we have something great that we can build upon, and I think the opportunity is ours, so let's not screw it up.
Very much so. Now the pressure's on.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank personally our 2021 chair, Jordan Anderson. She's done a wonderful job. She's been so dedicated and so involved and taking so many calls from me and some of the other board members and the staff about how we're going to do things. I want to have a round of applause for Jordan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next is our newly minted chair, Mr. William Goldston, has told me he's been around in this community forever. And William, will you please introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved with CCREDC and economic development?
Sure. I'm William Goldston. I was born here in Corpus Christi. Got a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Texas A&M. Went to Imperial College in London and did a master's degree in geotechnical engineering. When I came back to the States, I went to work for the company that today is known as Rabba Kistner and Associates. And Carl Rabba was an amazing mentor to me. I owe him nearly everything. And after 5 years in San Antonio, I decided I wanted to make a change. I called home, told my mother I quit my job, and I was going to go to Houston and find another job. My dad got on the line and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. The next day, I was managing the Marine and Civil Division of Goldston Corporation, the construction company, and I was a partner in the engineering company. Unfortunately, the crash of the 80s got us. We had debt on yellow iron, and there just wasn't enough work to service the debt. We ended up closing the construction company and laid off 1,800 people. And I'll tell you what, that was a real eye-opener to me. It taught me what an employer's responsibility is to its employees. I then went over and took over the engineering company. The engineering company had gone from 115 people to 16. And we ended up with some debt as a result of the settlement. And I rebuilt the engineering company. I opened a second office in Houston. Ultimately sold Goldston Engineering to CH2M Hill. Jacobs acquired CH's engineering group, and I have some great former employees that work at Jacobs. About 5 years ago, the local engineers came to me and asked me to reform the local chapter of their business association, the American Council of Engineering Companies. So I currently serve as the executive director of that chapter, and I'm the only executive director who's also been chairman of the state organization. When I moved back to Corpus full-time, I moved to the island. Always wanted to live on the island. And I wanted to get involved in the community. So I applied for and I got appointed to the Island Strategic Action Committee. And that was a great opportunity to work with the city and the island and try to grow the interest out there. When that term came to an end, I looked at where else could I do some help and be involved in the community. And the EDC was the obvious first choice. And I was fortunate that I got appointed, and I've really enjoyed serving, and I appreciate this opportunity to serve as your chair.
Thank you, William. I don't know if you're entirely sure what you signed up to do, but I want to thank you for doing it. It shows when he didn't show up to a meeting, he got nominated. It happens. William, what are you most excited to tackle in your incoming year as chairman?
You know, that's an easy and difficult question to answer. I would say that my greatest expectation is to help you and your staff win more good quality jobs into our area. And I look forward to having some celebrations on every one of those wins. And I would reach out to our group and say, look, if you have suggestions, if you have concerns, if you have issues, feel free to contact me at any time. And let's see if we can move this organization forward faster and better. So thank you.
Thank you, William. Thank you, Jordan. We appreciate your service, and we appreciate your continued support for this organization. Ladies and gentlemen, our 2021 and 2022 chair.
To you as well. Thank you.
Actually, if I can take a moment, I'm going to introduce, Sorry, I'm never really good at these things when it comes to stand up on stage and having to actually talk. It's time for me to introduce our good friend and colleague for over many years, known this gentleman for a long time. He is Omar Garcia, the Chief External Affairs Officer of the Port. The Port has been so involved in quite a few important projects in the green energy space, which we think is going to be one of the opportunities for us as we move forward. He's going to be introducing Dr. Mark Schuster, this year's featured speaker. Come on up, Omar, and introduce Dr. Schuster.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Ian, for that introduction. You're a tough act to follow, so I promise you I won't have any humor in my introduction of Dr. Schuster. But what a great event, Ian. It's always a pleasure to talk before CCREDC. Those of you that know me well, I started my career at CCREDC over 20 years ago, so it's always good to come back to where I call home and where I started my career. So thank you, Ian, for giving me this opportunity. It's my honor today to introduce Dr. Mark Schuster as he discusses Texas' role in producing hydrogen at scale. This is an important topic for us right now, especially at the Port of Corpus Christi, as we celebrate our centennial celebration this year of being in operation for 100 years. And as we look to the future, hydrogen plays a very important role for us, with the understanding that our current customer base, the oil and gas industry, is our core base and will remain so for many, many years to come. Fossil fuels are important in our everyday lives, and they're not going away anytime soon. But as we look for the next 100 years, what is that next leg up for our customers, for this community, and this region? And hydrogen is one of those in concert with carbon capture sequestration. As you may have seen through our MOUs and in the news, we have several partnerships with the National Renewable Energy Labs, with Ares, with Howard Energy, with Thales, just to name a few, as we look to grow and expand hydrogen and carbon capture in this region. As many of you know, we're the energy port of the Americas, and it's a title that we take very seriously. We're the largest energy export gateway. We have 58% of the market share right now. But if we want to continue to have that energy export of the Americas, we have to look at hydrogen, and that's our next leg up in our growth for the next 100 years. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mark Schuster, who is the Deputy Director of Research at the Bureau of Economic Geology at the University of Texas at Austin, Hook 'em Horns. He leads the Bureau's energy-related research, including thematic programs on resource recovery, reservoir characterization, and energy economics. Dr. Schuster is the principal investigator and leader of the GeoH2 Consortium, focused on geological storage of hydrogen. Prior to joining the Bureau in 2016, Dr. Schuster worked for Shell and its affiliates for over 30 years in research, exploration, and leadership roles as a geologist, exploration manager, vice president, and executive vice president in assignments in the United States, the Netherlands, Australia, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates. His work experience includes projects in the Gulf of Mexico, Permian Basin, Atlantic margins, Australia, the Middle East, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Alaska. He is the recent past president of the Gulf Association of Geological Societies, vice chair of the American Geoscience Institute Foundation, and trustee of the American Association of Petroleum Geologists Foundation. He holds a BS in geology from the University of the Pacific, as well as a PhD in geology from the University of Wyoming. Let's give Dr. Mark Schuster a warm South Texas welcome.
Great, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and it really is an honor and a pleasure to be here. The CCREDC has, I think, put together a wonderful show. I was able to catch some of that from the back room. But what has really impressed me is just the amount of economic development that's occurred in the Corpus area. And as was just touched on, I see hydrogen as an opportunity not only for Corpus, but for the Gulf Coast and for Texas. And what I want to do today is talk about hydrogen as an opportunity. Because I'm a geologist by background, I want to talk a little bit about why the geology matters, and in particular, be able to talk about hydrogen in the context of other energy, particularly in natural gas as it's developing. So with that, let's move on, and let me just say a couple of words of introduction about the Bureau of Economic Geology for those that may not be familiar with it. We are a research institution at UT. We're the oldest research institution at the UT campus. We've been around since 1909. We focus on these difficult problems that involve energy, the environment, and economics, and try to look at those problems as holistically as we can and attack them in an integrated manner. A lot of our work is focused on oil and gas resources, as you might imagine, but we're doing things in geothermal, hydrogen, which I'll talk about, but also environmental issues and addressing, the economics of how energy and environment meet and overlap. I just want to show these pictures up here. Not that I'm sure that you'll recognize anybody, but we have a large team that's been involved in our hydrogen research at UT. And these are some of my collaborators and contributors to these talks, this talk. And I just want to make sure that you see them. They represent disciplines including reservoir engineering, geology, geophysics, economics, and as I was saying, we're trying to bring this together so that we can create a more integrated view of a system, which hydrogen needs to be, so that we can approach it in the most optimal way. So today, I want to talk about the hydrogen opportunity. And I'm going to start off by giving a very broad brush overview of hydrogen production and supply. And then we'll talk about energy demand with a little bit more focus on natural gas and LNG, because I think you can all relate to that here. And then see how hydrogen can actually be phased into that energy mix. And in doing so, I want to address the importance of geological storage as well as the assessment of value chains in what is uncertain but exciting opportunity. So for those that are working hydrogen, you know, you're seeing articles, announcements come out on a daily basis. For those who haven't been exposed to it, you know, I'd suggest go home, Google hydrogen. You'll see just a downpouring of recent articles and other tracks in the web. And it's a hot topic right now. It's a hot topic here in the US. It has been a hot topic in Europe for many, many years. And it's a hot topic globally for lots and lots of reasons. But the main reason is that it offers the potential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions as an alternative energy carrier or alternative fuel. So one thing that has happened just in the last few months is that the U.S. Department of Energy made an announcement based on the new Infrastructure Act of developing what are called clean regional hydrogen hubs. So not only does this come with the excitement, but they're moving forward to develop these hubs with the expectation that there'll be roughly $8 billion of funding available over the next 5 years to essentially incentivize development of clean hydrogen in the U.S. So this is a diagram that the Department of Energy has used, and I kind of like it. It may look a little bit complex, but it really touches, I think, all aspects of what need to be touched in looking at hydrogen as a system, hydrogen as opportunity or a spectrum of opportunities. And that we've got a focus on hydrogen because it offers the potential for lower greenhouse gas emissions, as I said. But the wonderful thing about hydrogen, similar to natural gas, is that it is a molecular energy source. And that means that it can be stored, it can be transported, and also, in this case, we have multiple ways of actually generating hydrogen. So you can do it through electrolysis from renewables or nuclear energy. You can generate, and most of the hydrogen, as I'll just show you, is currently generated by using natural gas with steam methane reforming methods. But it offers a whole plethora of ways to generate hydrogen supply. Then you need a system, an infrastructure that includes storage. And as I'll make the point, you need geological storage. You need the capacity that that brings. And I'll discuss why in a few slides. And then you have all sorts of potential usages for hydrogen. Industrial, power backup, transportation, more refining uses, petrochemical manufacturing, all sorts of things. Now, exactly what the winners are going to be and what the specific value chains are is unclear right now. Just be honest. We don't really know. However, because of the flexibility, the opportunity is to see which ones develop and then be competitive in that space. So coming from an oil and gas background, you know, in talking about gas, you usually talk about gas volumes. And one thing with hydrogen, it gets a little bit confusing with the nomenclature and the units. So just remember, because you'll see reference to mass units for hydrogen. A kilogram of hydrogen has about the same energy as a gallon of gasoline. So that's a simple way to keep track of that. The other thing to note is that by unit volume as a gas, hydrogen has about a third of the energy that methane does, or natural gas does. So hopefully those go-bys will kind of help simplify what the opportunity is. So hydrogen production. U.S. In 2020 produced about 10 million metric tons of hydrogen across the country. Almost all of that was done via natural gas, steam methane reforming, or similar methods. Globally, the production was 70 million metric tons. And most of that was coming via natural gas, but a large part, particularly in China, was done through coal gasification. So there's a lot of talk about electrolysis, and there is hydrogen that's being produced by electrolysis, but currently it's a small piece of the pies. So let's talk a little bit more about the spectrum of supplies. And for those that are familiar with hydrogen, been working it over the last year or so, you know, you'll be up to speed with the rainbow of colors. Now, personally, I'm colorblind. I mean that literally as well as figuratively, in that I think we should be less concerned about exactly what the source of the hydrogen is going to be, or could be, and more around are we, you know, providing a clean or lower greenhouse gas emission supplies. So we talk about blue hydrogen as coming from natural gas, where there's associated carbon capture and storage. So you'll hear reference to blue. You'll hear reference to green hydrogen when it's being generated through electrolysis from wind, solar, or hydropower. And then the other one that sticks out is pink hydrogen, which is a hydrogen that's being generated from nuclear power. Anyway, that's the spectrum. And the cost range varies considerably across these. The less expensive production methodologies are those using fossil fuels, natural gas and coal. More expensive right now, at least, the ones coming from renewable and nuclear energy. And you can see on the slide also that there's a variation in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So some of these are basically without greenhouse gas. Some have, where you don't have the CCS associated from fossil fuels, higher greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a chart just of the numbers that I was showing on the previous slide, just referencing the relative costs. And as you'll see, the ones on the lower left here, the lower cost units, those are coal and natural gas systems with and without carbon capture. So, you know, that's the lowest cost methodology that we have currently. Electrolysis is of interest, definitely of interest, but the costs need to be reduced, so that we need some technological advances there. And the Department of Energy is trying to get the costs of clean hydrogen down to about $1 per kilogram for a production unit cost. So that's the goal, and that's collectively where a lot of research and development is currently focused. So now let's talk a little bit about hydrogen in the context of future energy demand. And in particular, being here in Corpus with LNG and natural gas utilization and production nearby from Eagle Ford, I think that's really important to do so. So what's happening globally, of course, is that there's increased focus on low or lower carbon energy. And you know, as a takeaway, I just want to say that natural gas is going to play an important role in future energy supply for the next several decades. It plays that role in part because it's going to be there to offset, particularly in the power sector, greenhouse gases from coal. Clean hydrogen will start to emerge and be phased in, but it's going to take some time, and I'll elaborate on that, in terms of being able to actually develop this technology, develop the markets to allow hydrogen to effectively compete in this mix. So here's a slide with a couple of graphs just showing a projection of natural gas demand. And this is from our economist that's working on the team assessing a most likely demand. And the most likely in this case basically assumes that it's reflecting policies that have been announced by countries with regards to greenhouse gases, and as well as expectations on a commercial basis. So what you see from this is growth, in particular in this done by area and also by sector. And what you see is growth in the sectors of industrial usage as well as power generation. And the big sector or big area is Asia. But others like North America and Europe also are increasing their natural gas demand. And this breaks this out further by sector and also by area. So the higher columns there are Asia. And what's notable in that, in just a couple of years, basically the demand from Asia is going to exceed the demand from North America. So, we're seeing tremendous growth in Asia for natural gas, for energy in general. And then the other countries, areas, you also see increases, both Europe and North America, but Asia is the 500-pound gorilla in the room. And this is going to have an impact on North American LNG. So again, with our most likely demand model, what we're seeing is that Asia is going to be the big market for LNG export going forward. And it's a lot of growth in this area and opens up, I think, very exciting opportunities for LNG going forward. Now, if we look at this, and it's hard to see the lower diagrams, but it just, again, make the point that Asia is where the big demand is, but there's additional demand elsewhere for LNG, and that most of the export is probably going to be met, well, not most, but a large part is going to be met from North American gas supply, in part because we have a large amount of supply. A key point, and linking it back into hydrogen, is that we have seen announcements of policies in Asian countries as well as in Europe on basically the greenification or carbon reduction associated with the utilization of energy sources, particularly in the power generation sector. And so Japan has made announcements, Korea has made announcements. China hasn't really made hard announcements yet, but what we're going to see, and already starting to see, is that this is putting in place a demand for hydrogen, or hydrogen in the form of ammonia, or it could be liquefied hydrogen to help meet their energy requirements. So when we talk about what is the potential demand for hydrogen looking forward, we've got forecasts here out to 2050, so 28 years from now. And there's a huge range, as you might expect or might want to see. If you look at ExxonMobil's assessment, maybe it's a couple of percent. They do see some growth. It's not huge. If you look at Shell, their high assessment is on the order of effectively the equivalent of 300 TCF of hydrogen gas by 2050 for their high assessment. They have more modest assessment on the order of about 80 TCF. And then the highest assessments in terms of projection are coming from the Hydrogen Council, which you might expect, is about 22% of the global energy mix. So I would just say, think that range, keep it in mind. It's 2% to, let's say, 20%. in the next 28 years, but with the expectation that there's going to be growth in demand regardless. So now if we come back to the US, and just another way to portray demand, we've done our own work looking at a case, hypothetical case, how about we just want to replace 10% of natural gas consumption in the US with hydrogen. And what would that mean in terms of consumption in the 2050 timeframe? So we've set that. We're comparing it with a couple of cases that the Hydrogen Council or Hydrogen Energy Association put together. And basically, it kind of is falling in between their base case and their ambitious case. So it's reasonable, and it equates to about 14 TCF of hydrogen gas. But, and this is where the whole question around scale comes in. You know, it just takes, and will take, a huge amount of growth, economic development, in order to be able to deliver even that modest or middle-of-the-road scenario. And this is a projection, so we'd need to get to about 33 million metric tons of total production in the US, and with some assumptions like 5% or 7% per annum growth, which is really high level of growth, it would take on the order of 20 to 30 years to be able to get there. So it's doable, but it's going to take a lot of activity. So let's shift now to geological storage. And why geological storage? Well, we actually got into looking at hydrogen because we are really curious about how the hydrogen system would work at scale, particularly when we look at the natural gas system in the US. And, we're blessed, let me tell you, we are blessed with a system that is functional, has the infrastructure in place, which includes geological storage. There are over 400 geological storage sites across the country. And these provide the means for essentially energy resilience to be able to store the natural gas and get it delivered when it's needed. So, and that equates to over 4 TCF of volume that's available for stored gas, and it's about 13% of the annual consumption. So that's kind of our mental model when we look at hydrogen systems. Now, there is a little bit of hydrogen storage already in southeastern Texas and in salt domes. I'll touch on that a little bit more. But, it pales in insignificance, really, when you look at the natural gas system. The part of the focus on hydrogen, and I mentioned its beauty as a molecular energy carrier, is that it provides for storage, high power storage at extended discharges, which, if you put it in battery terms, means that it provides potentially energy that can be utilized over seasons or indefinite durations, which is different from electrochemical batteries. And to bring that point home, if we look on the left, that's Vistra's energy lithium-ion battery system that's in California. I believe that's the largest electrochemical battery system in the world right now. And that offers 1.2 gigawatt hours of energy with about 4-hour storage duration. If you compare that with what would be a very small geological storage site with hydrogen, you get essentially 100 gigawatt hours. So look at this on the order of 100 times, just with a small site of what you're going to get from a battery farm with indefinite storage duration. So this is the appeal, or one of the appeals for hydrogen. The types of storage really vary depending on the geology, as you might expect. You have the ability where there is salt present to store hydrogen and salt, make salt caverns and store it in these salt caverns. You can also store it, we think, in depleted oil and gas fields, and that's some of the research that we're doing, as well as what are called saline aquifers, or water-bearing reservoirs. So the geology is really important in terms of the storage type, and it's informed what's being done with the natural gas storage. So there's salt storage where you have the salt. There is depleted reservoir storage where you have those, and saline aquifers where you don't have the other two. And this is the model that we effectively are moving forward with for hydrogen storage. Just really bring home the point. Why geological storage? Well, the surface options in their capacity are shown on the left there in blue. And then in green are just some indicative storage capacities for geologic options. So you really aren't going to be able to afford to store the amount of energy that you're going to need without utilizing subsurface reservoirs. And, coming back to this projected demand just for the U.S., that's orange is showing the kind of storage that would be required, and it's significant. It doesn't mean that we couldn't repurpose some of the existing storage, and probably would do so, but probably would need additional storage to make a hydrogen system work. And just echo that. So here is that 10% case. And just in terms of salt caverns, you'd need more than 1,000 additional salt caverns than what are currently available. And you'd need, if there was fields which have larger capacity, you'd still need a couple hundred of these to develop the storage that's going to be required. So in itself, that is a lot of work to figure out where you're going to develop these storage areas. We need to do some testing, particularly for depleted fields and saline aquifers. So that's implicit in trying to make a hydrogen system work. And this brings us back to the subsurface evaluation. The individual that introduced me was talking about CCS. That's a key part of this, particularly for natural gas sourced hydrogen generation. You need not only to be able to store the hydrogen, but also to effectively dispose of the CO2 that's captured. And we're blessed here in Texas. We're blessed here in the Gulf Coast. You're right offshore or right under our feet, effectively, with a lot of pore space, a lot of rocks that we can inject CO2, and also potentially areas that we can store and recover the hydrogen. So we use a tremendous amount of technology. I remember somebody joking with me, well, geology isn't rocket science. Well, I beg to differ on that one, because the amount of science and technology that goes into understanding the subsurface is incredible. And we need all these tools to be able to address what type of storage could work and where. So salt domes, just to put this in perspective, so for those that maybe are not familiar with the salt dome, that's a model of one over on the left, and then a cavern. And a cavern essentially is made by injecting fresh water down a borehole, pumping out the dissolved salt, and then essentially creating a cylindrical cavern that can be utilized for storage. And to put that in perspective, there's the Empire State Building. These are very high or long features, and on the order of a couple hundred feet of diameter. So these, where we have salt domes like that, really provide for potential to store a lot of energy. And we're blessed in the Gulf Coast with lots of salt domes and storage sites that have already been developed for oil, gas, LPGs, et cetera. But we also have sites in West Texas. It's a different kind of salt. It's called bedded salt, but these can be developed for storage as well. For the depleted fields and aquifers, we have less experience with storing hydrogen than in salt caverns. Essentially, we don't have any. Some syngas has been stored in it, and a little bit of experimentation, but there's some basic questions that need to be addressed to be able to demonstrate that storing and recovering hydrogen from these depleted fields and saline aquifers is workable. So this is where part of our research comes in. So, what's the potential for leakage? How is hydrogen going to interact with the fluid in the rock and the subsurface? What does it mean in terms of how much we're going to get back if we inject hydrogen into the system? And these are some of the questions that we're addressing. And to do that, we do what's called reservoir simulation, where we basically make a model of the subsurface. These are, coming back to rocket science, these are rocket science caliber models that allow us to effectively model flow in the subsurface. And this allows us to compare with how hydrogen is going to behave versus natural gas or other fluids like CO2. And what we know is that hydrogen is definitely different than those fluids. It's much, much more mobile. It is much lower density than even methane. It's much less viscous, so it behaves differently in the subsurface. And we need to understand that and simulate it in order that we can basically optimize how we're going to use these reservoirs. So one of our researchers have developed some models. These are really cool models. I'm not going to go into detail, but where we can compare natural gas and hydrogen. And what we see are some notable differences. For a given pressure, we are limited on how much hydrogen we can actually put into a reservoir. So there's going to be potentially less hydrogen storage capacity than for natural gas. Other issues like it tends to disperse more easily, so it may spread out more than natural gas would. So these are the questions that are being addressed with those models. Now I want to talk about value chains, and we kind of talked a little bit about that with the DOE diagram up front. But, as I said, there's a lot of flexibility in hydrogen, both from a supply as well as utilization perspective. We don't know exactly what the value chains are going to be that develop and are competitive. So we are doing some work here to address those and be able to assess, okay, which ones are more optimal than others, and what are effectively the weak links in these value chains. And to do that, we have built a tool to allow us to assess the storage component in detail, what are the whole flow path in terms of how you're going to inject the hydrogen and then recover it from the system, and all the steps that are required to be able to manage the gas. And then be able to do some economics and cost analysis on that, which is quite important, and be able to assess markets. And this lets us then set up for more high-level analysis of the economics of hydrogen systems and looking at demand, and particularly the spatial components. So, you may have usage in one area, it's being generated in another area. Where do you need to place the storage? How do you optimize infrastructure and try to maximize the potential for economic development of a given value chain? Now, with all that, I want to come back to Texas. And, I think I've said it twice before. I'm going to say it 3 times. We are blessed. We are blessed with abundant resources here. And we've got not only the oil and gas resources that we all know and love, but we also have wind. And you've got wind turbine farms sitting out eyesight from here. We also have solar. And all of these are effectively the potential vehicles for generating hydrogen, in clean hydrogen specifically, when we couple the fossil fuel generation with CCS. Oh, just back up on there. Yeah, one thing I didn't point out is blessed. See those bubbles? Those are the volumes of gas that are in the plays that are in Texas, in place, and then the next largest set of bubbles is the amount of gas that we can actually, we think, recover. And that's on the order of about 800 TCF. So U.S. consumes about a little over 30 TCF per year. It's a huge amount of gas resource, and we need to make the most of it. So, just finishing up here, but we are really well positioned for playing in the hydrogen space. We've got the supply, we've got already demand, we have the potential for building additional demand. And I think, finish up with this last slide, coming back to this Department of Energy opportunity and the Infrastructure Act, we need to position as effectively as we can for playing in that area. And I just want to put my hand up. Our group in the UT is open for business. We're happy to partner with all of you. Think about the storage components as you move forward with your opportunities, because you need to. And with that, I'll stop.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody gets an hours of continuing education credit, I think. First of all, let me tell you, I am a horrible economic development guy because I telegraph what we are doing. Remember in 2015, we stood before you and said, we think ethane and natural gas liquids are a thing. And then in 2017, Exxon and SABIC announced a natural gas liquids ethane cracker for $10 billion. And you remember in 2017 where we stood before you and said, we think we can get in the steel business in a big way. And if we do these things with, and I see Ken Griffin sitting there, Ken was part of the team. I know that John Michael sitting there, he was part of the team that did some of the engineering work. And we all put this thing together, and 2 years later, Steel Dynamics announces a $2 billion project. Again, I'm a horrible economic development person because I telegraph where we're going. Hydrogen, folks. All right, back to the script. Thank you for taking the time to tune in into our show. We shared, we laughed at me mainly, but now, thank you. But now I got to split before someone asks about all the secret deals on the horizon. Hydrogen. Or the Sierra Club finally puts a price on my head, which is about par for the course with me. Anyway, with that, I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for your support of CCREDC, and I wish you all a wonderful 2022.